I wasn't looking for a coffee. I wasn't looking for a savior. I was looking for a shield. When you are a single mother with exactly $12 in your bank account and a bruised rib cage, your world shrinks. It shrinks down to the immediate radius of safety around your child. It shrinks down to the basic, primal math of survival. Can I run faster than him? Can I hide better than he can seek? And if he catches me, can I take the hit so my daughter doesn't have to? My name is Samantha. I'm 24 years old, but my bones feel 80. I used to be a barista. I used to be an art student. Now I am prey. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday in Miami. The sun was beating down on the asphalt, turning the city into a humid, shimmering oven. I was carrying Lily, my 3-year-old daughter, in my arms. She was asleep, her small face pressed against my neck, her sweat mixing with mine. She was getting too heavy to carry for long distances, but I didn't have a stroller. I didn't have a car. I barely had shoes that fit. I was walking fast, keeping my head down, hugging the shadows of the storefronts. But I could feel him. You know that sensation? When the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, not from the cold, but from the sheer electric pressure of being watched? I dared to glance over my shoulder. 3 blocks back, a red pickup truck, idling at the intersection. Derek, my ex-boyfriend, the father of my child, the man who had promised to love us and then spent 3 years trying to break us. He was drunk. I could tell by the way he was driving jerky, aggressive, drifting into the crosswalk. He had found us again. We had moved 3 times in 6 months, sleeping on friends' couches, in shelters, in a motel room that smelled like bleach and despair. But he always found us. He was like a bloodhound for misery. The light turned green. The truck gunned its engine. A roar of mechanical aggression that made Lily stir in my arms. "Shh, baby," I whispered, pressing her closer. "Just sleep. Mommy's walking." I needed to get off the street. If he caught me in the open, he would grab us. He would make a scene. He would drag us into the truck, and no one would stop him, because people in this city have learned that interfering in domestic disputes is a good way to get shot. I needed a public place. I needed witnesses. I needed a barrier. I turned the corner sharply, ducking into a plaza lined with high-end cafes and boutiques. This was Little Columbia, a neighborhood where the coffee was strong, the accents were thick, and the money was quiet. It was out of my league. I looked like a vagrant here in my faded jeans and oversized t-shirt, clutching a sleeping toddler like a life raft. I scanned the patio of the nearest cafe, El Capital. It was crowded. Businessmen in linen suits, women with designer sunglasses and lips that cost more than my rent, waiters in crisp white aprons moving like dancers between the tables. And then I saw him. He was sitting at a corner table, backed against a wall of ivy. It was the best seat in the house, protected, private, yet commanding a view of the entire plaza. He was alone. That was the first thing that struck me. In a place like this, men like him and I knew instantly he was a man like him. Didn't sit alone. They sat with bodyguards. They sat with beautiful women. They sat with sycophants laughing too hard at their jokes. But this man was an island. He was wearing a white linen shirt, unbuttoned at the top to reveal a heavy gold chain resting against tan skin. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and inked with tattoos that looked more like prison warnings than art. On his wrist sat a gold watch that glinted in the sun, a Rolex, maybe a Patek Philippe, heavy and ostentatious. But it was his face that made me stop. He had black hair slicked back, severe and perfect. His jaw was a line of granite, and his eyes, even from 20 feet away, I could feel them. They were dark, devoid of the casual happiness of the other patrons. He was staring at a cup of espresso as if he were interrogating it. He looked dangerous. He looked like the kind of monster that other monsters checked under their beds for. And in that moment of terrified clarity, I realized he was exactly what I needed. The sound of the red truck screeching around the corner behind me shattered my hesitation. Derek was here. He was parking on the curb, illegally, aggressively. I heard the heavy slam of a truck door. "Sam!" His voice roared. slurred, angry. "Don't you walk away from me!" Panic spiked in my chest, hot and sharp. I couldn't run anymore. My legs were jelly. I made a choice. A crazy, reckless, desperate choice. I walked straight onto the patio. I ignored the hostess who stepped forward with a menu. I ignored the stares of the wealthy patrons who looked at my sweaty face and sleeping child with disdain. I walked right up to the wealthy corner table. The man in the white shirt didn't look up. He was turning a gold ring on his pinky finger, round and round. My shadow fell over his table. "Can I sit here?" I asked. My voice was breathless, trembling. It wasn't a polite request. It was a plea. The man stopped turning his ring. He slowly, agonizingly slowly, lifted his head. His eyes met mine. They were even darker up close. Bottomless. There was no surprise in them, no confusion, just a cold, calculating assessment. He looked at my messy hair. He looked at the bruise on my arm that I had tried to cover with makeup. He looked at Lily, sleeping oblivious to the danger. He didn't say anything. He just looked. "Please," I whispered, the word cracking in the middle. I glanced over my shoulder. Derek was stomping onto the patio, pushing past a waiter. He was huge, red-faced, wearing a dirty tank top that stained the air with the smell of stale beer and sweat. He hadn't seen me yet, but he was scanning the tables. Looked back at the man. "Please, just pretend you know me. Just for 5 minutes." The man in the white shirt looked past me. He saw Derek. He saw the aggression. He saw the disruption. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just lifted his hand, a large manicured hand, and gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "Sit," he said. His voice was deep, a gravelly baritone that vibrated in the air between us. It wasn't a welcoming invitation. It was a command. I collapsed into the chair. I pulled Lily onto my lap, shielding her head with my arms, burying my face in her hair so Derek wouldn't see my profile. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Thump, 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 thump. I was sure the man across from me could hear it. He picked up his espresso cup. He took a slow, deliberate sip. He placed it back on the saucer without making a sound. "Breathe," he said quietly. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his watch. "You are hyperventilating. It is annoying." "I'm sorry," I gasped, trying to suck in air. "I'm sorry. He's crazy." "He's drunk." "He is loud," the man corrected. "I hate loud." "Sam!" Derek's voice boomed. He had spotted me. I flinched. I curled tighter around Lily. I waited for the grab. I waited for the violence. Heavy footsteps approached our table. The smell of alcohol hit me before he did a wave of cheap whiskey and unwashed body. "There you are, you little bitch," Derek snarled. He loomed over the table. His shadow blocked out the sun. He reached out a hand to grab my shoulder. "We're going home," Derek spat. "Get the kid. Let's go." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Leave me alone, Derek. Please." I said, "Let's go." He grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into the bruise he had put there 3 days ago. I cried out, a sharp, involuntary sound of pain. Lily woke up. She started to wail a high, piercing sound of toddler distress. "Shut that kid up!" Derek yelled, raising his hand, as if to backhand me. But the blow never landed. There was a sound, a sharp click, like metal hitting metal. I opened my eyes. The man in the white shirt hadn't stood up. He hadn't shouted. He had simply picked up a steak knife from the table, setting a heavy, serrated blade with a wooden handle, and slammed the point into the wooden table, hard. It stood there, quivering, inches from Derek's hand. Derek froze. He looked at the knife. Then he looked at the man holding the handle. The man in the white shirt was looking at Derek with an expression of mild curiosity, like a scientist examining a particularly stupid bug. "You are touching my guest," the man said. His voice was soft. So soft that Derek had to lean in to hear it. But the tone was absolute zero. It sucked the heat right out of the afternoon. Derek blinked, his drunken brain trying to process the shift in dynamic. He looked at the man, the expensive shirt, the gold, the eyes. Even in his stupor, some primal instinct warned him that he had just stepped onto a landmine. Guessed? Derek scoffed, trying to find his bravado. Buddy, this is my girlfriend, and that's my kid. This is a domestic dispute. Mind your own business. Your business? The man repeated slowly. He released the knife handle. It stayed upright, stuck deep in the wood. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The muscles in his forearms shifted under the skin. You are making a scene in my favorite cafe. You are shouting. You are smelling of. What is that? Gasoline and failure? He tilted his head. And you woke up the child. The man's eyes shifted to Lily, who was sobbing into my chest. For a fraction of a second, the darkness in his eyes lifted, replaced by something unreadable. Then it snapped back to Derek. Apologize, the man said. Derek laughed. It was a nervous, jagged sound. Apologize? Who do you think you are? I'm taking my woman and I'm leaving. Derek reached for me again. This time, the man moved. It was a blur. 1 second, he was leaning back. The next, he was standing. He didn't walk around the table. He moved with the efficiency of a striking cobra. His hand shot out and grabbed Derek by the throat. He didn't squeeze. He just held him. He pushed Derek back, pinning him against the stone pillar of the patio awning. The cafe went silent. The waiters stopped. The businessmen stopped eating. No one moved to intervene. No one called the police. They just watched. Derek clawed at the man's hand, his face turning red, his eyes bulging. He was a big guy, a construction worker who brawled in bars on weekends. But against this man, he looked like a child. I asked for an apology, the man whispered, his face inches from Derek's. Not a debate. He tightened his grip. Derek's heels lifted off the ground. He made a choking, gurgling sound. The lady, the man said, gesturing vaguely toward me with his free hand. And the child. You woke them. You frightened them. Apologize. Sorry, Derek wheezed, his face turning a terrifying shade of purple. Sorry. The man stared at him for a count of 3. Then, with a look of disgust, he released him. Derek crumpled to the floor, gasping for air, massaging his throat. He looked up at the man in the white shirt with pure terror. Go, the man said. He didn't point. He didn't shout. He just said the word. Derek didn't argue. He didn't look at me. He scrambled to his feet, stumbling, coughing, and ran. He ran off the patio, jumped into his truck, and peeled away, tires screeching. He was gone. The adrenaline crash hit me instantly. My hands started to shake so violently that I couldn't hold Lily steady. I slumped back in the chair, tears streaming down my face. Relief, shame, exhaustion, it all hit me at once. The man in the white shirt straightened his cuffs. He adjusted his collar. He pulled the steak knife out of the table with a smooth thwack and placed it neatly back on the napkin. He sat down. He picked up his espresso as if nothing had happened. I wiped my eyes, trying to pull myself together. I needed to leave. I needed to get Lily away from here before the police came, or before Derek came back with a gun. Thank you, I whispered, clutching my bag. Thank you so much. You saved us. The man didn't look at me. He took a sip of coffee. He was rude. I dislike rude people. I stood up, my legs wobbling. Lily was heavy in my arms, a dead weight of sleeping child. I should go. I don't want to cause any more trouble. I'm so sorry about your table. I took a step away. Sit down, the man said. I froze. Excuse me? He looked up at me. The coldness was back. The predator was back. I said, sit down. I really have to go, I stammered, taking another step back. My bus. I have to. There is no bus, he said calmly. And you have nowhere to go. I saw your shoes. I saw your bag. You are running on fumes, Querida. He gestured to the chair. Sit. I can't, I said, panic rising again. I appreciate what you did, really, but I have to leave. The man sighed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. He placed it on the table, Then he looked at the waiter standing nearby a man who had watched the assault without blinking. The waiter nodded and moved to the patio gate, locking it. My blood ran cold. "What are you doing?" I asked, hugging Lily tighter. "You asked for a shield," the man said, his voice low and smooth like velvet over gravel. "You asked me to intervene. You involved me in your mess." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. The gold watch glinted. "In my world, Samantha," he said, and the sound of my name on his lips, a name I hadn't given him, made my stomach drop. "Favors are expensive. Protection is a product, and you just ran up a tab." He pointed a finger at the empty chair. "Sit," he commanded. "You asked to join my table. Now you are part of it, and no one leaves my table until I say the meal is over." I looked at the locked gate. I looked at the waiters who were now watching me with guarded eyes. I looked at the man who had choked Derek with one hand. I realized then that Derek was just a dog. I had run from a dog straight into the den of a wolf. Slowly, terrified, I sat back down. But as I looked down at my sleeping daughter, I realized something terrifying. My hands had stopped shaking. The silence inside an armored Cadillac is different from the silence in a library or a church. It is a manufactured silence. It is a vacuum. The world outside the honking taxis, the reggaeton blasting from passing convertibles, the sirens wailing in the distance was reduced to a mute cinematic blur beyond the thick, bulletproof glass. I sat in the corner of the leather bench seat, pressing my back against the door as if I could merge with the metal. Lily was still asleep on my chest, her small breath hitching every few seconds in a post-crying hiccup. Her warmth was the only thing tethering me to reality. Everything else felt like a hallucination. The scent of the air conditioning crisp, chemically pure, smelling faintly of ozone and expensive cologne. The smooth, cool texture of the leather. The man sitting 4 feet away from me, scrolling through his phone as if he hadn't just kidnapped a woman and a child from a cafe patio. Gabriel. I watched him. I couldn't help it. Fear makes you study your captor. You look for cracks. You look for weakness. He didn't have any. He was still on the phone, speaking in a rapid-fire Spanish that was too fast and too slang-heavy for my high school-level comprehension. But the tone was universal. It was the tone of a man giving orders that would not be questioned. He tapped the screen, ended the call, and slid the phone into his breast pocket. He didn't look at me. He reached into a small compartment in the center console and pulled out a bottle of water Voss, glass, condensation beading on the side, and a heavy crystal tumbler. He poured the water. He drank. "You are staring," he said. He was looking straight ahead at the partition separating us from the driver. "I'm terrified," I replied. My voice sounded small in the cavernous car. He turned his head slowly. The movement was serpentine. "Good. Terror keeps you alert. Complacency kills." "Where are we going?" I asked again. "You said the bank. I don't have a bank account." "Well, I do, but it has $12 in it." "We are not going to a bank," Gabriel corrected, swirling the water in his glass. "We are going to my bank, or rather my vault." The car turned off the highway. The scenery changed rapidly. We left the towering glass condos of Brickell behind, moving through the lush, overgrown canopy of Coconut Grove, and then deeper toward the secluded estates of Coral Gables. The houses here weren't houses. They were compounds, high walls, iron gates, cameras that tracked your soul as you drove past. We slowed down, approaching a massive gate made of black iron and mahogany. It didn't look like a driveway entrance. It looked like the entrance to Jurassic Park. There was no keypad. The gate simply swung open as we approached, sensing the car's tag. We drove through. The gravel crunched under the heavy tires, a sound that reminded me of bones breaking. The estate was staggering. It was a sprawling, white stucco Spanish colonial mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from the coast of Marbella. Fountains, statues, manicured hedges that looked like they were cut with lasers. And everywhere, men. Men in dark suits standing by the hydrangeas. Men with earpieces walking the perimeter. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The driver opened Gabriel's door. He stepped out. He buttoned his jacket. He waited. The driver opened my door. The humidity hit me like a physical slap. I climbed out, shifting Lily to my hip. She was waking up now, rubbing her eyes, looking around at the strange, bright world. "Pretty," she mumbled, pointing at a fountain where a stone cherub was spitting water into a pool of koi fish. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "It's pretty." "Come," Gabriel said. He didn't wait. He walked up the stairs to the massive double doors. I followed. I had no choice. The SUV had already driven away. The inside of the house was even more intimidating than the outside. It was cool, silent, and echoingly empty. The floors were polished marble that reflected my dirty Converse sneakers like a mirror of shame. The walls were hung with art massive, abstract canvases that looked expensive and cold. Gabriel led me through the foyer, down a long hallway, and stopped in front of a set of double doors at the back of the house. He pushed them open. "This," he said, gesturing inside, "is the investment." I stepped into the room. It wasn't an office. It wasn't a dungeon. It was a studio. It was the most beautiful art studio I had ever seen. The entire back wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, looking out over the bay. The light was perfect northern exposure, diffused and steady. There were easels, dozens of them. There were tables covered in paints, Winsor & Newton, oils, acrylics, expensive pigments I had only drooled over in catalogs. There were racks of canvases, stretched and primed, waiting. And in the center of the room, sitting on a simple wooden stool, was my old sketchbook, the one I had left in the cafe. I gasped, touching my bag. I hadn't even realized it was gone. One of his waiters must have swiped it while I was eating the steak. "You looked through my book?" I asked, a flash of violation cutting through the fear. "I did," Gabriel said, walking over to the stool. He picked up the book. It looked tiny in his hands. He flipped it open to a page of charcoal sketch I had done of Lily sleeping on a park bench. It was rough, angry, desperate. "You have talent," he said. "Raw, untrained, but visceral. You draw pain well, Samantha. Probably because you know it intimately." He closed the book and tossed it onto a table. "Why am I here?" I asked, putting Lily down. She immediately ran toward the window, mesmerized by the view of the water. "I told you," Gabriel said, walking toward a large blank canvas. "I need to structure a debt. In my business, cash is problematic. It is heavy. It smells. It draws attention. I need to turn dirty money into clean assets." He turned to look at me. "Do you know how the art market works, Samantha?" I shook my head. "I went to community college for a semester. I draw in parks." "It is a scam," he said simply. "A beautiful, elegant scam. A painting is worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it. If I say this canvas is worth $5, it is worth $5. If I say it is worth $500,000 and I have a buyer willing to pay that, then suddenly it is an asset, a clean, legal asset." He pointed at me. "You are going to be the next sensation of the Miami art scene." I laughed. It was a harsh, hysterical sound. "You're crazy. I'm a nobody. I paint sketches of tourists for $10. "Not anymore," Gabriel said. "Starting today, you are Samantha Valdez, reclusive genius, discovered by the patron Gabriel Moretti. I will fund your exhibition. I will buy your first collection. My associates will buy your second collection. We will move millions of dollars through your paintbrushes, Samantha. And you will get 10%. He stepped closer. 10% of a washing machine that spends $10 million a year. Do the math. I stared at him. $1 million. $1 million a year to paint, to do the one thing I loved. It was the devil's bargain. It was Faust in a linen suit. "And if I say no?" I asked. Gabriel smiled. He walked over to a side table where a remote control lay. He picked it up and pressed a button. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a large flat screen. TV. It flickered to life. It was a security camera feed. Live. It showed a street corner. A familiar street corner. The bus stop where Derek had found us. A red truck was pulled over. Derek was standing outside of it, kicking the tires, screaming into a cell phone. He looked drunker than before, angrier. "Derek," Gabriel said, his voice bored. "He is currently calling every motel in a 10-mile radius looking for a woman with a toddler. He is persistent. I admire that. Stupid, but persistent." "What are you going to do to him?" I whispered, hugging my arms around myself. "Me?" Gabriel asked, feigning innocence. "I am going to do nothing. I am a businessman. I am an art collector." He pressed another button on the remote. On the screen, 2 police cruisers pulled up behind Derek's truck, not with lights flashing, silent. 2 officers got out. They didn't look like they were there to write a ticket. They walked up to Derek. "These officers are on my payroll," Gabriel narrated. Calmly, "They are going to find a bag of fentanyl under the driver's seat of that truck. A bag that was placed there 5 minutes ago by a very talented street kid I know." I watched in horror as the officers slammed Derek against the hood of the truck. He fought back. Of course he fought back. One of the officers pulled a baton and struck him in the back of the knee. Derek went down. "Possession with intent to distribute," Gabriel mused. "Assaulting an officer? In Florida? That is 15 to 20 years. Minimum." He turned off the TV. The screen went black. "The problem of Derek is solved," Gabriel said. "He is gone. Erased. You are safe." He looked at me. "But safety is a service, Samantha, and services must be paid for." I looked at the blank canvas. I looked at Lily, who was now pressing her nose against the glass, watching a yacht sail by. He hadn't just offered me a job. He had bought my life. He had removed the threat, yes, but he had replaced it with himself. Derek was a brute. I could run from a brute. Gabriel was an architect. You can't run from the man who built the maze. I can't just stay here, I said, my voice trembling. I need diapers. I need clothes. Lily needs toys. Already handled, Gabriel said. The east wing is yours. The nursery is stocked. The wardrobe is full. If you need anything else, you ask the staff. But you do not leave the estate. Ever? Not until the first collection is finished, he said. You need to focus. Suffering breeds art, no? Well, isolation breeds focus. He walked to the door. He stopped and looked back at me. There is one rule, he said. His voice dropped, losing the casual business tone, becoming the voice of the man who had stuck a knife in a table. You paint, you eat, you raise your daughter, but you do not ask questions. You do not ask who buys the paintings. You do not ask where the money comes from. And you do not ask to go to the park. He opened the door. Welcome home, Querida. He walked out, closing the heavy double doors behind him. I heard the lock click. It wasn't a subtle click. It was a heavy, mechanical thud of a deadbolt sliding home. I ran to the door. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I ran to the window. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Reinforced. I pounded on it with my fist. It didn't even vibrate. It was thick, hurricane-proof, bulletproof. I was trapped. I looked around the beautiful studio. The paints, the light, the promise of $1 million. I sank to the floor, burying my face in my hands. I had wanted a shield. I had asked for a shield, and now I was living inside one. Mommy? I looked up. Lily was standing there, holding a tube of cerulean blue paint. Paint? She asked, smiling. I looked at my daughter. She was safe. Derek was going to prison. We had food. We had a roof. I wiped my tears. I took the paint from her. Yes, baby, I whispered, pulling her onto my lap. We're going to paint. I looked at the blank canvas. It stared back at me, white and empty and waiting. I picked up a charcoal stick. I walked to the canvas. I didn't paint a sunset. I didn't paint a flower. I started to sketch. Violent, dark strokes. Bars. A cage. And inside the cage, a bird with gold feathers. If he wanted art, I would give him art. I would give him the truth of what he had just done. I was his investment. I was his prisoner. But I was still an artist. And the thing about artists, We see everything, and eventually we find a way to show the world the truth. 6 months. In the real world, 6 months is a long time. It's enough time to get evicted. It's enough time for a season to change. It's enough time for a child to outgrow their shoes. But inside the estate, time didn't move in lines. It moved in circles. Breakfast, paint, lunch, paint, dinner, Gabriel. I had become a ghost in a gilded machine. Tonight was the night the ghost became real. The gallery was in Wynwood, a converted warehouse with polished, concrete floors and ceilings high enough to fly a plane through. Outside, the paparazzi were flashing like strobe lights against the velvet ropes. Inside, the air smelled of expensive champagne, heavy perfume, and the crisp chemical scent of new money. I stood in the corner of the VIP section, clutching a glass of sparkling water like a weapon. I was wearing a dress Gabriel had chosen emerald silk, backless, clinging to me like a second skin. My hair was up. My makeup was flawless. I looked like a movie star. I felt like an imposter. Samantha Valdez, a woman with oversized glasses and lips injected to the bursting point, cooed, leaning in too close. Your work, it's so violent, so raw. The way you capture the cages, it's a metaphor for the patriarchy, isn't it? I looked at the painting hanging behind her. It was one of my first pieces from the studio, a charcoal and oil depiction of a bird with broken wings, trapped inside a rib cage made of gold bars. It's not metaphor, I said softly. It's a documentary. The woman laughed, a tinkling sound of delight. Oh, I love that. A documentary of the soul. You artists are so dramatic. She wandered off to find a waiter. I took a sip of water, my hand shaking slightly. This was my debut. The Cage Collection. Gabriel had named it. The entire Miami art scene was here. Politicians, celebrities, and, scattered among them like sharks in a koi pond, Gabriel's men. I saw them everywhere, standing by the fire exits, leaning against the pillars. They weren't drinking, they were watching. And then there was Gabriel. He was standing in the center of the room, holding court. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like armor. He was laughing at something a senator said, his hand resting casually on the shoulder of the gallery owner. He looked relaxed, charming. A legitimate businessman, supporting the arts. But I knew better. I saw the way his eyes flicked to the entrances every 30 seconds. I saw the way he positioned himself so no one was ever behind him. He caught my eye across the room. The charm vanished for a split second, replaced by that intense, possessive gravity that had pulled me into his car 6 months ago. He raised his glass in a silent toast. Owned, the gesture said. I looked away. He has a good eye, a voice said beside me. I turned. A man was standing there. He was older, heavy-set, with a face that looked like kneaded dough. He was wearing a suit that was expensive but ill-fitting, and his fingers were covered in rings. He smelled of vodka and something sour. Excuse me? I said, stepping back. Your patron, the man said, nodding toward Gabriel. Moretti. He has a good eye for talent. The man's eyes didn't look at the paintings. They raked over my dress. They lingered on my neck. It was a look I knew well. It was the look Derek used to give me before he started drinking. It was the look of a man who thinks everything has a price tag. I'm just the artist, I said coldly. Of course, the man smirked. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. I'm Dmitri. I represent a consortium of buyers from Moscow. We are very interested in your work, specifically the nude sketches in the back room. My stomach dropped. I hadn't painted nudes. I had sketched studies of my own body in the mirror, trying to document the bruises fading, the muscles changing. They were private. They were never meant to be shown. Those aren't for sale, I said. Everything is for sale, Dotchka, Dmitri whispered. He reached out and touched my bare arm. His fingers were cold and damp. If Moretti can buy you, so can I. I can offer you a bigger cage. Or maybe no cage at all. He squeezed my arm. Let go, I whispered. Just a drink, he insisted, his grip tightening. Let's discuss the price. I froze. It was the cafe all over again. The paralysis, the fear, the feeling of being small in a world of giants. And then the air in the room changed. It wasn't a sound. It was a drop in pressure. The chatter nearby stopped. The laughter died. I looked up. Gabriel was there. He hadn't run. He hadn't shouted. He had simply materialized, cutting through the crowd like a shark parting a school of fish. He stood next to Dmitri. He didn't look at the Russian. He looked at me. "Is he bothering you, Samantha?" Gabriel asked. His voice was low, smooth, terrifiedly calm. Dmitri laughed, releasing my arm but standing his ground. "Gabriel, my friend, I was just complimenting the talent, negotiating a purchase." Gabriel turned his head slowly to look at Dmitri. "The collection is sold out, Dmitri. You know this." "There are always private reserves." Dmitri grinned, showing gold-capped teeth. "I was hoping to acquire the artist herself for a private commission." The silence that followed was loud enough to burst eardrums. Gabriel smiled. It was the smile from the patio. The smile he gave Derek before he choked him. "Dmitri," Gabriel said softly, "you are mistaken. Samantha is not an acquisition. She is the crown jewel." Gabriel placed a hand on Dimitri's shoulder. It looked friendly, but I saw the tendons in Gabriel's wrist snap tight. I saw Dimitri's face go pale as Gabriel's thumb dug into a pressure point near the collarbone. "And you," Gabriel whispered, leaning in so only the three of us could hear, "are touching the glass. You know the rule at museums, Dmitri. You break it, you buy it. But if you touch this exhibit again, I will break you." Dmitri winced, his knees buckling slightly under the pressure. The vodka courage evaporated. He saw the look in Gabriel's eyes, the black ice, and he remembered who he was dealing with. This wasn't a gallery owner. This was the butcher of Bogota in a tuxedo. "My apologies," Dmitri gasped. "Misunderstanding." Gabriel released him. He brushed imaginary dust off Dimitri's jacket. "Go," Gabriel said. Dmitri scrambled away, disappearing into the crowd, looking for the nearest exit. Gabriel turned to me. The violence faded from his face, replaced by a strange, intense scrutiny. He looked at the red mark on my arm where Dmitri had grabbed me. "Did he hurt you?" "No," I said, rubbing my arm. "I'm fine." "He won't be back," Gabriel said. "He will be on a plane to Moscow in the morning, or he will be in the Everglades. It depends on how annoyed I feel in an hour." He offered me his arm. "Come, the show is over." "But it just started," I said, looking around at the confused guests. "We haven't sold anything yet." Gabriel laughed, a genuine, dark laugh. "Look around, Samantha." I looked. Every single painting on the wall had a small red dot next to it. "Sold." "I don't understand," I said. "Who bought them?" "I did," Gabriel said. I stopped. I stared at him. "What?" "I bought them," he repeated, guiding me toward the private exit. "All of them. The shell companies. The anonymous buyers. It's all me." "Why? I?" demanded, pulling away from him. "To launder the money? To make the scheme work?" Gabriel stopped. We were in the hallway now, away from the crowd. He looked at me, and for the first time in 6 months, he looked vulnerable. "No," he said roughly, "because I couldn't stand the thought of anyone else having them. Those paintings, they are your pain, they are your soul, and they belong to me." He reached into his tuxedo pocket. I thought he was going to pull out a cigar. Instead, he pulled out a thick envelope. He held it out to me. "Take it." I took the envelope. It was heavy. I opened it. Inside was a passport, my name, a new identity, and a bank book for an account in Switzerland with a balance that made my head spin. $2 million. "What is this?" I whispered. "The door," Gabriel said. "It's unlocked." I looked up at him, stunned. "You said I couldn't leave," I said. "You said I was an investment." "You were," he said. "But tonight, seeing that pig touch, seeing you look at me with fear." He looked away, clenching his jaw. I have enough prisoners, Samantha. I don't want a prisoner in my own house. He trailed off. The car is waiting out back, he said, his voice hardening again. It will take you to the airport. Private jet to Zurich. You and Lily. The house is arranged. You never have to see me again. You are free. Derek is gone. The debt is paid. He stepped back. He looked at me one last time, a look of burning, desperate longing that he immediately extinguished. Go, he said. He turned and walked back toward the gallery, back to the noise, back to the violence. I stood alone in the hallway. I held the envelope. Freedom, safety, a normal life for Lily. No more guards, no more guns, no more Gabriel. I looked at the exit sign glowing red at the end of the hall. Then I looked at the gallery door where Gabriel had vanished. I thought about the last 6 months. Yes, it was a cage, but it was a cage where I was fed, where I was safe, where I created the best art of my life. And Gabriel, he was a monster, he was a killer, but he was the only man who had ever really seen me. Derek saw a punching bag. The world saw a charity case. Dimitri saw a piece of meat. Gabriel saw a queen. He saw the fire. He saw the predator hiding inside the prey. He had bought every painting. He wanted to possess my soul, but he had just given me my freedom. The duality of it tore me apart. I looked at the envelope. $2 million. I walked to the nearest trash can. I dropped the envelope inside. I turned around. I walked back to the gallery door. I pushed it open. The room went silent as I entered. Gabriel was standing in the center, his back to me, pouring a drink. His shoulders were slumped. He looked alone. I walked up behind him. You forgot one, I said. Gabriel froze. He turned around slowly. He saw me standing there. He saw my empty hands. Samantha, he whispered, the plane. I missed it, I said. I stepped closer to him, invading his space, just like he had invaded mine at the cafe. You bought the paintings, Gabriel, I said, looking up into his black eyes. But you forgot to buy the artist. I reached out and took the glass from his hand. I took a sip. And the artist, I whispered, is not for sale. She is here by choice. Gabriel stared at me. The shock on his face was the most satisfying thing I had ever seen. Then a slow, dark smile spread across his face. It wasn't the predator's smile. It was the smile of a king who had just realized his queen had returned from war. Sit, he commanded softly, gesturing to the velvet fip couch. I smiled back, a dangerous, sharp smile that matched his own. I'll sit, I said. But you're sitting with me. I sat down. I patted the space beside me. The cartel boss, the king of the South, the man who made senators tremble, obeyed. He sat down. He took my hand. He didn't squeeze it. He just held it. And as the cameras flashed and the world watched, I knew the truth. I wasn't the human shield anymore. I was the sword,